someone who looks like me walks past you in the street, do you think they're a mother, a refugee, or a victim of oppression? Or do you think they're a cardiologist, a barrister, or maybe your local politician? Do you look me up and down, wondering how hot I must get, or if my husband has forced me to wear this outfit? What if I wore my scarf like this? I can walk down the street in the exact same outfit, and what the world expects of me and the way I'm treated depends on the arrangement of this piece of cloth. But this isn't going to be another monologue about the hijab, because Lord knows Muslim women are so much more than the piece of cloth they choose to wrap or not wrap their head in. This is about looking beyond your bias. What if I'd walked past you and later on you'd found out that actually I was a race car engineer and that I designed my own race car and I ran my university's race team? Because it's true. What if I told you that I was actually trained as a boxer for 5 years? Because that's true too. Would it surprise you? Why? Ladies and gentlemen, ultimately that surprise and the behaviours associated with it are the product of something called unconscious bias or implicit prejudice. And that results in the ridiculously detrimental lack of diversity in our workforce, particularly in areas of influence. Hello, Australian Federal Cabinet. Let me just set something out from the outset, right? Unconscious bias is not the same as conscious discrimination. I'm not saying that in all of you there's a secret sexist or racist or just like lurking within waiting to get out, right? That's not what I'm saying. We all have our biases. They're the filters through which we see the world around us, right? I'm not accusing anyone. Bias is not an accusation. Rather, it's something that has to be identified, acknowledged, and mitigated against. Bias can be about race, it can be about gender, it can also be about class, education, disability. The fact is we all have biases against what's different to our social norms. The thing is, if we want to live in a world where the circumstances of your birth do not dictate your future, and where equal opportunity is ubiquitous, then each and every one of us has a role to play in making sure unconscious bias does not determine our lives. There's this really famous experiment in the space of unconscious bias, and that's in the space of gender, in the 1970s and 1980s. So orchestras back in the day were made up mostly of dudes. There was up to only 5% were female, and apparently that was because men played it differently, presumably better. But in 1952, the Boston Symphony Orchestra started an experiment. They started blind auditions. So rather than face-to-face auditions, you would have to play behind a screen. Now, funnily enough, right, no immediate change was registered until they asked the auditioners to take their shoes off before they entered the room. Because the clickety-clack of the heels against the hardwood floors was enough to give their ladies away. Now, get this. The results of the audition showed that there was a 50% increased chance a woman would progress past the preliminary stage, and it almost tripled their chances of getting in. What does that tell us? Well, unfortunately for the guys, men actually didn't play differently, but there was the perception that they did. And it was that bias that was determining their outcome. So what we're doing here is identifying and acknowledging that a bias exists. And look, we all do it, right? Let me give you an example. A son and his father are in a horrible car accident, right? The father dies on impact, and the son, who's severely injured, is rushed to hospital. The surgeon looks at the son when they arrive and is like, I can't operate. Why?